Every so often, be it through some form of dispute, something topical and timely that the film industry wants to capitalise on, or simply coincidence, we end up getting two movies at roughly the same time which tackle the same subject, albeit in very different ways. Now, I've always been quite fascinated by these, and sometimes the story behind the scenes is almost as interesting as the films themselves. On occasion, we've been treated to two great films on the same topic, but more often than not we end up getting one good film and one complete stinker, or worse. Today we're going to take a look at Dead Man's Curve and Dead Man on Campus, both released in 1998 in an attempt to capitalise on a widely circulating urban legend at the time, which claimed that any student whose roommate takes their own life will automatically be granted a 4.0 grade point average for the entire year. Writer-director Dan Rosen's Dead Man's Curve, or simply The Curve, depending on the territory, opts for a very bleak approach to the subject, with main characters Tim and Chris plotting the murder of their roommate Rand right from the beginning. You know, it's kind of hard to root for the two main characters when they're planning to off someone and pass it off as a suicide without any context right from the get-go. And maybe that's what they were going for here, because one of the things that becomes painfully obvious as the movie tootles along is that there isn't a single likeable character in the bunch. If you're gauging things on a psychopathic spectrum, then we can put main character Tim right at the top of the fucking list as a grade A psycho.
Should I bash his head in with a rock? No, just to be sure.
This motherfucker makes Dennis Reynolds seem like a warm-hearted, well-adjusted mammal by comparison. If I didn't know any better, I'd say Matthew Lillard was cast in this movie purely because of his performance in Scream. It's as if they told him to do the exact same thing here, but turn it up to 11. Lillard is a talented actor, but his shtick gets tiresome really quickly here. And Tim has no redeeming qualities whatsoever. Chris, who I guess is supposed to be the hero of this story, is also deeply unlikable, but for very different reasons. He's obsessively preoccupied with getting into Harvard, so much so that it squashed his sex life with his girlfriend Felicity and turned him into fucking Captain Anti-Crack. But he's not an outward dickhead and treats people with a modicum of respect, so that makes him a hero in this movie's universe, I guess. So our supposed protagonists are both bastards in their own right, but see, that's grand because the level of their dickheadery pales in comparison to the giant piece of shit that they're planning to kill. When we first meet Rand, he is busy treating his girlfriend like garbage, so this tells us that the two lads are obviously justified in doing what they're about to do. Upon discovering that his girlfriend is supposedly pregnant, Rand goes berserk at a house party and takes a walk to a nearby cliff edge because it's convenient for the plot. The two lads show up to see their plan through and Chris starts to bottle it, turning away to puke his guts up while Tim does the deed alone. So, with Rand out of the picture, we get treated to some scenes where the lads are being interviewed by police and also talking with the college counsellor who offers them the 4.0. This is all really fucking dumb because the police point out that although they found a suicide note, they haven't actually found a body, so technically the official stance should be that they're dealing with a missing person and not investigating a potential murder. This also makes the fact that they've been offered the 4.0 seem like incompetence on the part of the university. Not only had the suicide not been confirmed as of yet, but the two roommates were also being considered persons of interest in a potential murder investigation, so the last thing the college should be doing is rewarding them for the supposed trauma until the investigation is closed. It all just feels like the half-baked seed of an idea from an inexperienced filmmaker who thinks his idea is more clever than it actually is. So Rand's girlfriend, devastated at the loss of her abusive boyfriend, throws herself off the same cliff, killing her irreparably.
Well, that's clearly unfortunate.
Following this, we're treated to a hodgepodge of easily predictable twists where the characters who think that they're in control of the narrative flip-flop right up until the very contrived climax where Rand re-emerges. And it turns out that he and Captain Anti-Crack have orchestrated a much deeper setup all along to get rid of Tim. They plant a suicide note on him and chuck him off the same cliff that Rand had supposedly been thrown off of earlier, and that his girlfriend, the only somewhat likeable character in this farce, did legitimately throw herself off, causing some very unfortunate collateral damage. Ah well. The movie leaves you with so many questions, but not the kind that you'd be left with after, say, a high-concept Christopher Nolan movie. I'm talking about the kind where you scratch your head for a while trying to process how a movie with so many obvious plot holes could even get made. How would Chris and Rand explain all of this to the university, let alone the police? How did they just convince Felicity to get on board with their plan right at the very end? What would stop her from agreeing to it in that moment just to prevent herself from getting dead, but then going straight to the cops the next day and spilling the beans? Surely the detectives on the case would be deeply curious about all of this, and if the movie were to shift gears at this point and focus on the investigation, then maybe this would have been a story worth telling. But nah, that's where it ends. Nobody asks any questions and the three survivors are now Harvard bound. The multiple twists and turns actually reminded me of another movie from 1998, The Far Superior Wild Things. Now there's a good film. So how does Dead Man on Campus fare by comparison? Well, it's a considerably less gloomy affair, though that's about as much of an understatement as saying that having a hangover is not quite as bad as having cirrhosis of the liver. And even though it's supposedly 5 minutes longer than The Curve, it feels like it zips by in about half the time. That's not to say that this is a good movie though, far fucking from it. This one is less psychological thriller and more cookie cutter American Pie style frat comedy. The two main characters this time around are still dickheads, but not the kind who would murder somebody and try and fake that it was a suicide. Just the kind who would take an already suicidal person and actively encourage them to get dead. Mark Paul Gosselaar is here, playing Zach Morris in all but name. He's kind of the devil on the shoulder of his roommate Josh, who is a total bookworm until Cooper introduces him to the taboo world of women and weed. Cue Josh's grades slipping like a motherfucker to the point where he suddenly finds himself within a pubic hair of having his scholarship revoked. The two roommates quickly devise a scheme to find the most suicidal person at the university and convince them to move in with him, and then they'll just gently nudge that person into taking their own life, because nothing says teen comedy like assisted suicide. The entire second act is just them effectively auditioning supposedly suicidal students in order to decide who will be bestowed the honour of dying in their apartment. Naturally, it turns out that none of the three lads are suicidal at all. One is a fucking lunatic, alright, and has a death wish for sure, but he has no intention of being the one to end his own life, and because this is a 90s teen comedy, he also has an obsession with fucking things, human or otherwise.
I'm gonna screw this couch!
Another is a conspiracy theorist who believes that Bill Gates is out to kill him, and then there's this fucking guy who...
Stop! Please, guys, come on!
Well, I don't know what the fuck is going on there. So, by the time we get to our third act, Cooper and Josh are fresh out of ideas, and so Josh takes to the university bell tower to end it all himself. He gives a passionate speech to a crowd of onlookers who have gathered about how he pissed his life away and how it's not worth going on. Cooper arrives on the scene and pleads with his friend to come down off the roof, telling him that he has so much to live for. Josh does just that and they embrace. Cooper's legitimately relieved that his friend has decided to stick around, and Josh whispers in his ear,
"You think they bought it?"
implying that this little stunt will be enough for the college administrators to reward them both with the 4.0 after all. The two lads laugh like fucking maniacs. And that's it. That's the story of Dead Man on Campus, a complete nothing of a film. Once again, I find it astonishing that nobody at any stage during production thought to say, but hang on, if it turns out that acting suicidal is enough to get you good grades, why go to the trouble of trying to actually get someone to kill themselves in the first place? Oh well, best not think too deeply about it, I suppose. I mean, this is the same movie where we get to see a man fuck a couch. So there you have it. Two movies covering the supposed 4.0 urban legend, and as it turns out, neither of them are any good. Take my word for it on this one. I have walked so you guys can run. Run far, far away from ever watching these movies and into the loving embrace of Wild Things.